We were originally going to go with 5 quarterbacks because that seemed to kind of be the clear consensus. But then old DJ, Daniel Jeremiah, dropped his mock 3.0, which had the Las Vegas Raiders taking Michael Penix Jr. at 13 overall in a move that I feel would be a true shocker if this were to happen. DJ referenced that, the Raiders' unique style of play being a fit for Penix. Okay, interesting. I mean, yeah, I'm curious. Are you on board with this Penix going 13th overall or in the first round at all, or are you not buying it?
I'm not buying it. I would be absolutely shocked if this move came to fruition. And that's not to say that Penix is not a good prospect. Coming out of Washington, he had 4 season-ending injuries at Indiana before transferring to Washington. Bounced back in a huge way, has been one of the most productive collegiate quarterbacks over the past 2 seasons. 6-year senior, so he's a little bit on the older side. He's 24. So one of the older prospects in this class here, obviously has that injury history, including 2 torn ACLs and 2 season-ending AC joint separations. I think those were separate shoulders. So a little bit of that health concern, that profile is something worth noting, I think. From a fantasy perspective, though, not incredibly overwhelmed with excitement for Penix. And I think it comes down to, the lack of run game that he's going to offer. Penix comes out as a pure pocket passer. One of the best deep ball passers you're going to find in this draft class, but I think can sometimes miss some of these layup throws, some of the short to intermediate throws. Doesn't have, I think, as much touch as you would necessarily like. Like, he throws an absolute cannon, right? Yeah. But sometimes the cannon, like, it has one speed and one speed only. And sometimes that translates to missed throws that he really shouldn't be missing. And then again, for the fantasy perspective, I mean, not running is not his game. He is going to be playing from the pocket, and that is where his comfort level lies. Barring a great situation, I think what we're going to be looking at is a Derek Carr type of trajectory, which, if you know me, I'm not a huge Derek Carr fan. He has his time and place, but I think can be a solid game manager, can, with the right players, push the ball downfield. Obviously, like, he was throwing to Rome Odunze, one of my favorite wide receivers in this class, who I think should be closer in the conversation with Jaden Daniels or with Malik Neighbors than anybody probably is admitting at this point. And still, it's not enough to get me bought into Penix. So tell me, what did you see? Am I too cool on Michael Penix Jr.? Because I want to like him. I think there are a lot of things to like about his game, but from a fantasy perspective, I'm having a hard time finding the upside.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We've aligned very similarly on this quarterback class. I'm noticing, but I'm with you. I mean, I love the arm strength, the ability to make those NFL throws, and a willingness to throw the ball downfield and take those deep shots is huge, right? We mentioned the big time throw rate is 75th percentile among quarterbacks, but performed really well in the PFF grading system as far as career passing grades go, 91.1, which was 87th percentile. But he did this not just by that decent big time throw rate, but by limiting the negatives as well, which I thought was really impressive. Just the 1.8% sack rate, which is an amazing number. And then career pressure to sack conversion rate of 6.5%. So the best in this class at avoiding sacks. And, again, the turnover worthy plate rate was great, 96th percentile. So there's some encouraging numbers there that I think NFL evaluators might love. And maybe that's why DJ liked him in Vegas for those reasons. And I think, that impressive arm strength is going to probably help his case if he is going to go in the first round, just maybe not at 13, right? And because there are areas where he's just kind of average, and especially compared to the rest of this class, right? Like you mentioned, the rushing potential isn't really there. I think 35 total scrambles across his college career in 49 appearances, right, over 6 years at Indiana and Washington. So a lot of tape for Michael Penix, and all of his rushing metrics too. They're well below average. So it's not anything to get excited about in the NFL either, right? Where JJ McCarthy, similarly low sample size, but he at least did it well, right? And that hasn't been the case for Penix. And then when it comes to a lot of those overall accuracy rates that I've referenced for almost all the other quarterbacks, he's much closer to average as well among prospects since 2017, whether it's 10 plus yards downfield or 20 plus. He's kind of in that 59 to 61 percentile group. So not terrible by any means, but does it equal first round, top 15 quarterback, fantasy starter? I don't think so.
It feels more of a needs-based draft pick than a value-based draft pick or a best available type draft pick. And I don't know necessarily that I have a lot of insight as to how desperate the Raiders are. I think, Penix definitely pegs in more as a second round talent, especially in comparison to the rest of the quarterbacks in this class. I think you just have too much talent here at the top that it's really hard to get on board. You've got a solid O-line class, you've got a solid quarterback class, a really good wide receiver class. When you're not in that top tier, a lot harder to buy in at top of market value.
Yeah, I'm with you, right? And even think about as much as the NFL loves like arm talent and arm strength and all that, you look at a guy like
big hands.
Levis last year, big hands, yeah, right.
1.5-inch hands. It's hand size season, so I get it.
Yeah, but even Will Levis, right, ended up being a second round pick last year, and he was more accurate on a lot of those deeper throws as well, and had a cannon for an arm. So I have a hard time seeing Penix in the first round, but you just never know. So that's our 6 that we were going to focus on today. So let's rank them now. We kind of, you could probably surmise where we have these guys, but I'll be interested to see, Kate, where you have everybody ranked here 1 to 6. And how do you want to do it? You want to do our ones first, or you want to do 1 through 6, and then I'll do my 1 through 6? We didn't really talk about
our ones first.
All right.
Say it on 3. # Caleb Williams, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I got Caleb Williams. It's the same for me. I mean, I think even from a fantasy standpoint, I think he has the strongest argument for QB1 in dynasty rookie drafts and in redraft as well. There's probably going to be some people that like Jaden Daniels a little bit more. They like the sexiness of his rushing upside and things like that. But I think Williams is the clear one for me, especially with the team adding Keenan Allen, DJ Moore. You got DeAndre Swift there. There's so many weapons around him right now for him to thrive. And I think he'll have a very good rookie season, and then long-term just kind of be that clear QB1 from this class.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the upside. Jaden Daniels, by the way, is my quarterback too, but I do think from a perspective of evaluating career longevity, we mentioned some concerns with Jaden Daniels and maybe taking some hits that could impact his long-term viability from a health standpoint. Caleb Williams, I have fewer of those concerns, and I think that could be something that's worth noting.
Yeah, I'm with you. I got Jaden Daniels as my QB2 as well. I mean, Caleb Williams, we don't really have to talk about favorite landing spot but maybe for Daniels we do, because do you have a favorite landing spot for Jaden Daniels? Because I know for me, I would love to see Jaden Daniels on the Minnesota Vikings. They'd have to trade up and make a move to get him. But again, another like Caleb Williams situation, there are already some great receiving weapons in that offense to utilize. You add a dynamic dual threat quarterback like Daniels in the mix now, something that they didn't have with Cousins, obviously, but just adds to the overall potential of that offense. So Jaden Daniels, my ideal / dream landing spot for him would be Minnesota. I think that would be a really fun one if they could pull it off.
Yeah, I would love to see that pulled off. My only issue with that really is the fact that I want to send, I think the best landing spot for any of these quarterbacks is probably going to be the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm trying to save my Minnesota Vikings landing spot. I would love to see Jaden Daniels behind a good offensive line. I think the Vikings can fit that. I think that's probably the only thing that I'd really like to see. But Jaden Daniels, because of his diversity and the way that he can play the game, both through the air, on the run. I think that's going to give a lot of teams a lot of flexibility in terms of landing spot.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I think he'll be. Either way, I think we could get relatively excited about Jaden Daniels for fantasy purposes, regardless of where he lands. But how about your number 3? Is it the same as mine and Drake May?
It's Drake May, and it's kind of interesting because like for a long time, Caleb Williams and Drake May were the consensus 1-2 quarterback duo in this class. Jaden Daniels obviously made his way into the mix, but Drake May, I think he has all of the tools that you want in a quarterback. He's only 21 years old. He's got a lot of time to clean up some of those concerns that you have. The taking sacks, that definitely needs to work on that. Some of the decision making, but like all of the things that are somewhat concerns for Drake May are things that can come with experience and coaching. And you also love the mobility factor for Drake May.
Right.
I think that can be a huge point of upside for, the offense that drafts him. It gives you a lot of flexibility. You can call some designed runs with him. He's got the potential as a scrambler. And that obviously is going to lend itself to some fantasy upside, especially with that frame. Get him inside the 5-yard line, and you might have yourself like just a nice safe floor of like 5 touchdowns a year just inside the 5 because he's so big. I think that's going to give him a little bit of a sneaky floor in terms of his rushing touchdown production.
Yeah, he's definitely somebody that I'll be intrigued to potentially draft in fantasy leagues. I think there is some starting potential there with him. Even if we're getting like 5-6 rush attempts per game from him, like he's pretty dynamic with his legs that he should be able to make the most of those opportunities. And in a place like Washington, for example, he'll have, Austin Eckler and Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, those guys around him. So it could be a nice offense for him if he does end up going number 2 overall. So yeah, our top 3, sorry, I should say, are exactly the same. How about once we get out of that top 3, where are you at with QB4?
This is not going to be a surprise based on how glowingly I spoke of him, but it's JJ McCarthy for me. And JJ McCarthy, incidentally, the quarterback tied to the Minnesota Vikings most frequently at this point after they traded to acquire another first-round pick. I think everybody's expecting another move up, maybe inside that top 5 to land a quarterback like JJ McCarthy. Obviously, JJ McCarthy in the Vikings offense in particular, we talked about offensive line, the weaponry there. Obviously, you've got Justin Jefferson, assuming he is not traded, which I am not assuming anytime soon. Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson when healthy. You have the addition of Aaron Jones at running back, who we know is also a threat in the receiving game. I think JJ McCarthy to the Vikings is just such a perfect fit. And let's assume that pairing happens. JJ McCarthy is probably going to be like my favorite offseason ad in my 2 QB leagues and my super flex leagues. Probably just going to be able to slate him in as an every week QB2 with maybe a little bit of sneaking upside if they can get those legs moving on the ground.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. He's my QB4 as well. We have the exact same list so far. But yeah, I think, depending on landing spot, I'll probably be more or less excited about JJ McCarthy for fantasy purposes. Like Minnesota, I'm as excited as I was about him right today. If he goes somewhere like, say, New England, who's also had success with a former Michigan quarterback in the past, maybe not as exciting, but I don't think it's a bad thing long term, right? Like, again, we're not considering him a finished product or anything like that. He's still 21 years old, so there would be opportunity for him to develop and become a fantasy starter at some point as well. So, there, depending on landing spot, again, I'll be interested to see kind of how it shakes out. But JJ McCarthy, pretty good chance he'll be my QB4 as well this year. At QB5, I have Penix. Are you exactly the same? Or so we have Nix and
Yeah.
Penix 5 and
We
6.
don't have a
Okay.
lot to fight about in this show here. Like
Yeah.
I feel
Welcome
like
to
we're very
Chalk
much
Talk
on the
with
same
John and
page.
Kate. Yeah.
What's giving Bo Nix the edge over Michael Penix Jr. here in this case for you?
Yeah. So I guess for me, I just think there's a little bit of a safer floor with Nix, right? Like I think, and or I guess I don't know. I don't want to say higher ceiling. I think potentially Penix has the higher ceiling, but it depends what you want. But I think that Bo Nix just for the safer floor makes him probably a better long-term NFL prospect, if that makes sense, right? Which is something I want to bet on. And, depending on landing spot again, if Penix lands somewhere where he's going to be the starter, I could see myself taking him over Bo Nix in redraft, but not for dynasty necessarily, right? Like I'm just a slight more of a believer in Bo Nix for dynasty purposes and lasting in the NFL versus a Michael Penix, who I didn't hate. I liked him. I watched the tape. I liked him more than I thought I would, but I also came away feeling more confident about Rome Odunze and even Jalen Polk watching the Michael Penix tape as well. So I just, yeah, I look in the same kind of mold that, maybe Derek Carr and Jimmy G are in those kind of low average depth of target, conservative type quarterbacks, right? Like that's kind of how I picture Bo Nix. So not exciting for fantasy, but I could see him sticking around in the NFL and being valuable to NFL teams for longer. So that was the tiebreaker for me.
Yeah, I think I'm right on par.
All right.